All right, let's jump right in today. We're doing a deep dive into a letter to the editor from Free Malaysia today, and, well, it's causing quite a stir.
Oh, it is. It's definitely got people talking. And when you see who wrote it, it's not that surprising.
Yeah, talk about credentials.
Right. Dr. Ahmad Farouk Musa, a surgeon.
Yeah.
And get this, he's also working on a doctorate in Islamic studies.
Wow.
Talk about impressive, right?
Yeah. I mean, this isn't just some random person sounding off. This is someone who's deeply engaged with both the medical world and, intellectual and religious thought.
Yeah.
And he's taking on the Malaysian prime minister.
Head on.
Yeah. For how he's talking about the country's top earners. It's fascinating.
It is, and it's interesting how he's framing this whole letter like it's addressed to the prime minister, right?
Right.
But it reads more like, I don't know, a personal plea.
Oh, I see.
From like an old friend, almost.
Yeah, yeah.
He keeps bringing up their shared history.
I noticed that too.
Fighting side by side during the Reformasi period, even defending the prime minister back in the day against all those accusations.
It's like we're reading someone's diary.
Kind of, right.
Yeah.
Like a private conversation that accidentally went public.
Exactly.
And that's what makes it so powerful, I think.
Oh, absolutely.
You can just feel the raw emotion.
Yeah.
The sense of betrayal. Even though he signs off as a friend.
Right.
You can tell he's hurt and angry.
Oh, yeah.
Like almost saying, look, we were in the trenches together, battling for a better Malaysia, and now you're turning on us the T15.
Okay, hold on. Let's break that down.
Sure.
For people who might not be familiar with the term, when he says T15, what's he referring to?
So in Malaysia, T15 means the top 15% of income earners.
Got it.
They've become this focal point in the whole debate about wealth inequality and, how the government should handle it all.
So Dr. Musa, being part of this T15 group, is really pushing back against this label that the prime minister's been using, Mahakaya, which basically means super rich, yeah.
And it's not just about rejecting a label, it's about challenging this whole narrative that's been built up around the T15.
Right.
Like they're these greedy
parasites.
Yeah, hoarding wealth.
Benefiting from subsidies that are meant for the poor.
Exactly. He's saying, hold on a second, that's not the whole picture.
And he backs it up
Yeah.
with some pretty strong arguments.
Oh, yeah.
Like, he brings up their contribution to taxes.
Huge.
80% of the income tax revenue in 2022.
You can't argue with that number.
I mean, that's a huge chunk of change.
Right. And he emphasizes their success didn't just, poof, happen overnight. It's years of hard work, sacrifice.
Earning the midnight oil.
Exactly, to get where they are.
It's like, we earned our spot.
Yeah, it's a we paid our dues kind of argument.
Yeah, like he's saying, we played by the rules, we contribute, now we're being demonized for it.
Exactly. And then he goes after the prime minister's whole push for cutting back on subsidies.
Right.
Suggesting it's all this fabricated narrative.
Yeah, to kind of soften the blow.
Right, make the public more accepting of these cuts.
And he gets specific.
He does.
He points out that the T15, they don't even use the subsidized goods that the prime minister keeps mentioning.
Right.
They're buying premium cooking oil, grade A eggs, basmati rice. Not exactly what B40 are relying on. Right?
No, not at all.
So that's a good point.
And by the way, for our listener, B40 refers to the bottom 40% of earners in Malaysia.
Right, the folks who really need those subsidies.
Exactly, the most economically vulnerable.
So he's showing how the T15, their consumption is totally different.
Different world.
And he uses his own profession as an example, surgery.
Oh, that's a good one.
Saying driving a safer, more expensive car, it's not about luxury.
It's about protecting his expertise.
Right, which ultimately benefits everyone.
Exactly. So it's like he's saying, look, if I'm going to perform these complex surgeries, I need to be alert, safe on the roads.
Makes sense?
That benefits the whole community.
Right, not just me.
It's a clever way to connect personal choices with a bigger social impact,
Yeah, I like that.
And then he goes on to criticize the government's Purdue system.
Oh, yeah, the big database.
The one that's supposed to help target subsidies.
Right.
He calls it costly, ineffective, even throws out the price tag, a whopping RM 85.27 million.
Oof.
Clearly, he's not a fan.
Not at all.
It seems like it represents this frustration with government inefficiency and misplaced priorities.
Yeah, he's basically saying you're wasting resources on this fancy system that isn't even delivering.
That's a good way to put it.
And this ties into his whole critique of neoliberalism.
Right.
Which he uses to describe the economic policies the prime minister and his economy minister seem to be pushing.
Okay, so for our listeners, neoliberalism basically champions free trade, deregulation, less government spending.
Right. So the idea is it leads to economic growth.
Exactly. But Dr. Musa is saying, hold on, it can make inequality worse.
And hurt essential public services like healthcare and education.
Right. So he's saying, look, I'm successful, part of the T15, but I'm worried about what these policies mean for everyone.
Especially those who can't afford to contribute as much in taxes.
Exactly. And what's really interesting is he explicitly states that he cares about society.
Yeah.
And wants to see their significant tax contributions, from the T15,
Right.
used wisely to help everyone, especially the B40.
So it's not just a me and mine attitude.
No, not at all.
He's saying, I want a thriving Malaysia for everyone.
It's a broader vision.
He's challenging this perception that the T15 don't care about the less fortunate.
It's a nuanced perspective for sure.
Really makes you think. And it's like, he feels the prime minister's not even listening to these concerns.
Right, like completely ignoring them.
He's really upset that people who owe millions in taxes are given these high-ranking positions.
Yeah, and a convicted kleptocrat gets leniency.
Meanwhile, they're going after the T15. It's like,
come on.
It's a pretty stark contrast.
Oh, it is. It's this hypocrisy that he's pointing out.
Yeah, and it just fuels this whole sense of like being targeted.
Right, like picking on us.
Yeah, it's like you're going after us while letting others off the hook.
Exactly, and it all builds to that final plea.
Oh, it's so powerful.
Do not make enemies out of us.
Wow.
It's a powerful reminder of their shared history, their common goals, the hurt.
Yeah, you can just feel it.
The Mahakaya label, like it really stung.
It did.
And, this whole thing resonates beyond just Malaysian politics.
Oh, for sure.
It's this global tension we're seeing.
Yeah, about wealth, responsibility, the role of government.
Mm-hmm.
It's everywhere.
Exactly. This is just one man's voice.
Right.
But it speaks to a much bigger debate.
About economic policy, social equity, how we even talk about different groups of people.
Exactly. So it brings us to a big question for our listener.
Yeah, what's that?
What are the implications of this letter? Could it actually change things? Future policies?
It's a good question. On one hand, it's just one letter.
One person's opinion.
But he's not just anyone.
No.
He represents a whole segment of society.
He does, and he's well-educated.
Articulate.
Has a platform, his words carry weight.
Yeah. And he's tapping into this frustration, this disillusionment.
For sure.
It's not just venting.
No, he's offering a counter-narrative.
Right, a different way to think about wealth and contribution.
And a responsibility.
Like he's saying, don't just look at our income.
Look at the impact.
How we contribute to the nation.
Not just through taxes, through expertise, work, care for society.
Exactly. He's challenging the prime minister to look beyond those simple labels.
The stereotypes.
Yeah, engage with the complexity.
Right. So for our listener, why should they care about this letter?
What's the takeaway?
It raises universal questions, right? How do we see wealth? Success? What does it even mean to contribute?
It's like he's making us think critically about these narratives.
Especially the ones coming from those in power.
Are they real? Or are they pushing an agenda?
Exactly. And it highlights the danger of labeling and generalizing.
Putting people into boxes.
Like the rich or the poor.
We lose sight of their stories, their struggles, their contributions.
It's dehumanized.
Creates division, resentment, and ultimately harms everyone.
We end up with this us versus them mentality.
Instead of recognizing we're all connected.
Exactly. It reminds me of that quote.
Oh, yeah.
Judge each day not by the harvest you reap, but by the seeds that you plant.
Oh, I like that.
It's often attributed to the Dalai Lama.
It fits perfectly.
And that's what Dr. Musa is doing, trying to plant seeds of understanding.
And empathy.
A more nuanced perspective.
It's up to us to decide what to do with those seeds.
Do we nurture them or just toss them aside?
It's a call to action.
For sure. A call for dialogue, challenge assumptions.
Work towards a more just and equitable world.
Not just in Malaysia, but everywhere.
And it's a reminder that individual voices can make a difference.
Even in a world filled with challenges and divisions.
This letter is proof.
It really is.
Words have power.
They do.
To start conversations, challenge the status quo, inspire change. It's like reading this letter. You can't help but feel the emotion behind it,
Oh, absolutely.
It's not just a logical argument. It's a plea.
Yeah, and it goes deeper than that.
What do you mean?
The Mahakaya label, it's not just inaccurate, it's hurtful,
Yeah.
It diminishes the contributions of the T15.
And ignores the complexities of their lives.
And motivations.
You really feel that reading the letter.
Oh, yeah.
Almost like a physical sting. You see that word Mahakaya.
He wants the prime minister, the whole country even, to understand.
And what?
That the T15, they're not the enemy.
Right.
He sees them as partners.
Partners in what?
Building a better Malaysia.
Oy.
He's saying, look, we're the ones who are most invested in this nation's success.
And that's where that final plea comes in.
It's powerful, isn't it?
It is.
He's not asking for favors or special treatment. He's asking for understanding, a seat at the table.
Not to be demonized.
Exactly. It's a call for collaboration.
Not confrontation.
Let's work together.
Instead of turning on each other.
That's the message.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, I keep coming back to this question. How does this challenge our perceptions?
Of wealth and responsibility.
Do we fall into the trap of oversimplifying things?
Relying on labels, stereotypes.
It's easy to do.
It is. And maybe, like Dr. Musa is suggesting, the answer is dialogue.
Listening to each other.
Remembering that we're all human, connected.
Regardless of income or status.
Absolutely.
Lots to think about, that's for sure.
It is.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious.